Hello and welcome to episode 13 of the Mother Gaia Birthie Pod. In today's episode I'm joined by the wonderful Kaci, a knowledgeable and compassionate sex coach, as we dive into an often overlooked yet vital topic, intimacy and sex education. We're exploring the gaps in sex education, especially how these can impact us as parents and partners. We'll also discuss the importance of prioritising ourselves in the chaos of motherhood, how to improve communication with our partners, and ways to build intimacy without the pressure of sex. Kaci shares her expert insights and practical advice for creating deeper, more connected relationships whilst navigating the unique challenges of parenting and daily life. This conversation is both eye-opening and empowering, offering tips and reflections to help you reconnect with yourself and your loved one. So let's get started.
Yeah, so hi, I'm Sex Coach Kaci. I am a sex coach and educator. I work with parents who are either trying to conceive, pregnant, or postpartum. More importantly, I'm a mama of two. So I have a 4-month-old baby and still postpartum myself.
Wow.
And I have an almost 3-year-old. So she'll be 3 November 2024 when we're recording this. Yeah, so a few months from now. And I just love my girls so much, 2 girls. And we have a dog. I live in New Jersey in the United States with my husband. So we're about 30 minutes west of New York City. And life is busy. I am trying to balance being a mom and running my own business and helping other parents who are trying to find not only pleasure postpartum again, but really, how do you feel like yourself? How do you navigate being exhausted and sleep deprived with children and, actually feeling like a human that gets to eat and shower and meet your basic needs, right? So
Yeah.
people people hear sex and they're like, oh, a sex coach, like, I'm not ready for that. I don't need that. I'm like, no, but you do, because we're not really talking about sex. It's not only sex. It's so much deeper than that. It's about really tapping into our own energy, spirituality, mental well-being, physical well-being, because we really deserve all of that, even with children that suck a lot of that out of us.
Yeah.
Right. So that's me.
Absolutely. Excellent. So how did you start? Where was your beginnings?
Oh, my beginning. So I did not just wake up one day and decide I'm going to be a sex coach, although it could seem that way. That wasn't like my life dream or anything. But I actually wanted to be a psychologist. I knew that when I was in high school, I wanted to study psychology and really help people was my overall goal. And so once I went to undergraduate school, I took a human sexuality class, and it really opened my eyes because that was the first time I learned a lot of information for myself about not only, maybe in school we briefly covered preventing STIs or pregnancy, right? The big thing is
Yeah.
like, don't get pregnant,
Yeah. Yeah.
get
You
pregnant
have this
and
sack of
die.
flour to look after. Yeah.
Yes, right. And so we really didn't have a lot of sex education. I remember my gym teacher in high school just like flipping to the chapter of bodies and anatomy. He's like, okay, this is a penis, this is a vagina. You guys know this? All right, good. Close the book. Moving on.
I remember the first time because I did a nursing degree, and we were doing like obviously all of that and the biology and everything, and we got given like a rubber vagina, and I looked at it and went, what is that? And they were like, it's a vagina, you have one. And I'm like, I know that, but what is this bit? Like, there's stuff on here that I don't have. And they're like,
Uh-huh.
that's a labia. And I'm like, everyone's like that. Am I abnormal? Like, no, everyone's is different. That just happens to be what that one looks like. And I got really
Right.
freaked out because I was like, but I thought they were all the same. Like, no, they're not. They're all completely different.
It's amazing, right? What we're not told, just about something so basic about bodies. I know my almost 3-year-old, I had one of her caregivers giving her a bath, and they said, "Oh, what terms do you use when you tell her to wash her private parts, her genitals. Like, what are you saying? And I was like, oh, my husband said, oh, we use the term vulva. They were like, Volvo? Vulvas? What is that?
It's not a car.
And yeah, right. Not a car, not a Volvo. It's a vulva. And the inner part is the vagina. So I'm very, that's a passion of mine to make sure that my daughters get better information about their bodies than I
Yeah.
do. But yeah, those were kind of my beginnings. But in high school, I had a lot of friends who we were navigating sexually transmitted infections and pregnancies and abortions, and all of this was so hush hush. You couldn't ask those questions. You couldn't go to adults with those problems. You had to solve it on your own. And it was so sad and scary to me looking back at that, because we really were alone figuring those huge issues out. And so I became kind of a go-to friend, like, hey, well, I'll Google that for you. I know I can make a few phone calls. We can figure out where we go for that. We'll find somebody who will listen to us, right? And
See, I'm,
so
I'm
that's,
from the time before Google, so we didn't even have that to go to.
oh wow, so you were really on your own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember being a teenager and that, like, I was like a year above most of my friends, and they would be coming to me going, "How do you use a condom?" And I'm like, "Why are you asking me?"
Like, what is it about me that you
It's
think
like,
I would
"You're
know?
older, you know." And like, really?
Ah, that's a great point. And we went to our gym teacher before too, and we said, are there different size condoms? Do we need like a small one, a medium one, a large one? Are they all the same size? What do we do with this thing? You all are saying use them, but we don't know how. So, and the gym teacher's face got bright red and was just like, don't ask me that. Go back, go sit down, go to class, go eat lunch. We're like, okay. So there's this shame around talking about sex, right?
Yeah.
And not a lot of conversation about it in safe spaces where we could ask all of those questions. And so when I went to college, that was the first time it was just all questions were allowed and
Yeah.
on the table. And I thought that was beautiful. I loved it. I was really passionate about it. My professor said, you might be good at this as a sex ed teacher. And that kind of put a light bulb on in my head. Huh. Okay. Well, I like psychology. I like talking about this sex stuff. I see why it's so important. So, yeah, maybe I could do that. And then I decided to intern with teen parents. And so a lot of the teen moms were having issues with unhealthy relationships, older men that they were with, sneaking off to have sex behind whatever they could find, right? Not safe
Yeah.
places, not using condoms, not protecting themselves against future pregnancies. And then they were having babies on top of that and navigating, well, now how do I go to school and how do I get a job and what am I going to do? My parents kicked me out, or my parents aren't responsible enough to help me, or financial concerns, all of these things. These are huge, I don't know, just huge life issues
Yeah.
that we are placing on young people. And so I was like, no, 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 there has to be a better way. There has to be somebody that can talk to them about this realistically, make sure they have resources, make sure that if they don't want to get pregnant again, they can prevent that. Make sure they're in healthy relationships, they're focusing on their own pleasure, not just giving away their bodies in hope for something in return, like love, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of it was not even about sex. And this is a theme that comes up in my work a lot. It's rarely ever just about sex. It's so much deeper than that, about connection and intimacy. And what are we longing for? We want somebody to listen to us, right? We want to be heard. We want to be seen in some way and connected and feel like somebody cares for us. So they were doing all of that, but in the in the wrong
The
ways.
wrong
So
order. Yeah.
yeah. So that led me to go get my master's in sexuality, uh, education, right? I didn't know that was a degree that one could get. So that was really cool. And then I also got my certification in sex coaching. So that allows me to work more one-on-one with people virtually, asking them questions. And in this work now, where I am present day, I mainly focus my work on adults who also have skipped all of that, you know, and got the bad sex ed or no sex ed that we did too.
Yeah.
So I want to be that person that's like, no, not too late. We could talk about it. Let's figure it out. Let's make it great and have a good, not only sex life, but a good overall well-being for
Yeah.
our personal selves.
Absolutely. Oh, there's just so many questions. I just can't think of which one to say first. So what is it that you do, like one-to-one with people? What's your main sort of goal with that? What do you help people with the most?
So currently I offer one-to-one coaching, couples coaching, and an online course and community. So within those three things, I am working with parents who are trying to conceive, currently pregnant, or postpartum. So in a one-to-one session, let's say, that looks like me joining a Zoom call with the person. And what I love most about it is that I actually get to meet with people around the world. So I know you and I are
Yeah.
speaking from different parts of the world right now.
Yeah. It's so cool, isn't it?
It's amazing to me, and we can find these common connections, right? And that's part of what I do in my coaching sessions. I try to find what are those things that people want to work on. And it starts with a goal. What goals do you want to meet when it comes to your pleasure, your sex life, intimacy? Let's just say after having a baby. So, what they'll say mostly is people will come to me and say, Sex Coach Kaci, like, but I don't even want sex. So, how are you going to help me?
I'd rather have a cup of tea and go to bed early.
Yes, I just want sleep. So, how's this whole thing going to work?
Yeah.
And so, what I encourage people to think about is that it's not about adding more exhaustion to your plate. It's actually about how do we troubleshoot this so you have more time and energy in your day. So I use the MEBS model by sex coach Dr. Patty Britton. She talks about how do we look at the mind, the energy, the body, the emotions, and spirituality when it comes to sex.
Yeah.
And so for a postpartum parent, where I usually start is way 5,000 steps back from where they think we're going to start. And they'll say, what do I have to wear? Some sexy lingerie and go please my partner? Like, I just have to have sex with them to get it over with. Use some lube, try a different position. And no. So, where I start with my clients is actually tapping to our senses and our sensuality. Because a lot of us as parents are, I don't know if you can relate to this, but really overstimulated or understimulated, and both all at the same
Both at the same
time.
time.
It's like our children are need. I need this, I need that, I need this. And then on the other hand, the adult part of our brain is saying, wait, I need some adult conversation or something that is going to revive how I feel as a person, right? Like, I can't watch Bluey anymore.
I mean, I love
Just
Bluey, but there's only so much I can cope with.
yes, I'm glad you agree. Yes. And that's how I feel. And that's how a lot of my clients feel is like, okay, we need adult friends to talk to. We need mom friends, we need parent friends, we need people that have been there, done that, and be able to talk about it. So when you and I briefly spoke about your goal for the podcast of really just talking about birth, pregnancy, postpartum, that's what we need. That's part of, even before you talk about sex, that's where you start.
Yeah.
That's where we start.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, again, there's just so many things coming up. I keep trying to remember everything once. So the whole being overstimulated and unstimulated at the same time, I think a big thing for me, and I know a big thing for a lot of people that I've spoken to, is feeling touched out. So you,
Yes.
especially in the first few months, if you're breastfeeding and you're carrying baby around with you all the time, and the last thing you want once you've put that child down and they're going to sleep for a bit is anybody else touching you. So where do you go with that? Is that something that you kind of go, well, it phases out, let's do something else? Like, how do you go about that?
So that's a really great point and question, and I have been through it myself. I'm going through it. So I will tell you both what I do and what I recommend with clients. So
Yeah.
start with doing a self check-in with your senses, right? So what that looks like is you're going to think about each of the senses and where you currently are at with that. So let's say smell. Let's think about, what are you currently smelling in your environment? For me, I don't really smell anything in my environment right now. Maybe my breath, because I had everything bagel, some garlic. I
Nice.
could probably brush my teeth right now and feel a little more refreshed, right? Or I have this beautiful candle sitting here that isn't lit, but maybe I light that candle if I want something enjoyable sense-wise for my smell. Now, if you are feeling overstimulated with smell, then you want to shift your environment just slightly. So getting away from, trash that stinks, or asking your partner to take out the trash, or doing a simmer pot is one of my favorite very quick things, right? Because again, I don't want to add on a million things on your to-do list. The goal is to just think about those everyday things you're already doing and how can you make it more enjoyable for yourself. So next one might be hearing. What are you hearing? So people are listening to this podcast right now. That's one thing.
Yeah.
You can listen to that, put some headphones on while you're putting babies to sleep, or your children to sleep, or if you're moving throughout the day with them. How can we listen to music maybe? Or sometimes we just need silence. Sometimes you don't want all of that noise. And it's like, okay, turn the TV off, turn the music off. Let's just be. Let's maybe step outside, hear the birds chirping, the wind blowing. And so again, that little shift. So essentially you'll do that throughout all of them. You'll do smell, hearing, sight. What are you seeing? What are you tasting? What are you feeling? And you're going to adjust it based on where you're currently at. So let's use the example being touched out. If you're feeling touched out, that feel sense, it feels really overwhelming. Um, I've been nursing my daughter more, so I'm really like, okay, when she's down, I need a break. I just want a shower, maybe. Maybe you take a shower by yourself. And you communicate that if you have a partner that right now isn't the time for me to be touchy-feely. And if we are going to be touchy-feely, here's the touch that would feel good for me right now. And you communicate very clearly and say, okay, I don't want sex, but maybe rubbing my shoulders would feel really good right now because I've been so tense holding the baby all day. So can you just, do a little medium touch, just rub them out a little bit, and using that, right? So there's so many different ways you can play with that, but that's where I start, is really identifying first how you feel. And because we move through our day most of the time not even thinking about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another example with that is the food that we eat. I don't know about for you, but for me, by the time I get to eat, I'm scarfing something down. I just did it with a bagel right now. And so how often do we even get to taste our food? How often do we get to sip that cup of tea and really enjoy it, right? So what are those little things that you're going to start doing for yourself that really fill your cup, both literally and figuratively? And that way we're not feeling so overstimulated then when other people need stuff from us, because we're like, oh yeah, I'm taken care of first, and now I can help you meet your need, but I also need something in return, right? So when it comes to my children, I set boundaries with them and say, I need you to have quiet time, or I need you to do this. Does it work all the time? No. With my husband, hey, I need you to help uh, do the dishes and take out the trash, or do maybe a little extra. Can you watch the children for a couple of hours so I can get some quiet time for me. And then when we do that, we are less likely to be overstimulated and more likely to be willing to receive things from others then. We have to get to that spot first before we're adding on extra.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a massive running theme at the minute of setting boundaries and giving to yourself first. And I just think that a lot of people don't get that. They literally give themselves completely over, especially to a new child and what have you, which isn't necessarily wrong, but you can only give so much before you snap.
Yes. I completely agree. And you know what I talk about a lot with my own mom groups around me locally and virtually that I'm in is, where is the village? Right?
This is another running theme as well. There is no village unless you're all online.
Yes. So I'm glad that I'm not alone in that and that this is a theme, because where are we getting that help? Where are you getting that time to go take a shower and sip a cup of tea, right? Like,
Yeah.
you're like, well, yeah, Sex Coach Kaci, that sounds great, but realistically, how am I going to do that?
Yeah.
You know, and because we don't have that village, because um, different things in our societies, grandparents are more busy or not available, or we live by ourselves in our nuclear family units instead of with extended family and aunts and grandmothers and uh, people in our communities or friends. Even I was just joking with my mom friend yesterday. She says, oh, I wish I could come get your toddler from you just for an hour so you could rest. And I was like, yeah, that's great. She was like, yeah, but car seats and all of that. She was like, can you just drive her down the street? She only lives 10 minutes away. Can you drive her over and then you could go home? I was like, no, that takes more work.
Yeah, by the time I've clothed them, got them in their shoes, got them in the car, bribed them 3 times to do that, then got them to you, I could have just put them in front of a tablet and had a cup of tea. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And I say, you know what we really need is if we lived on the same street, if we were next door neighbors, right?
Tell you what,
But
me and you will
yeah.
start a commune.
Yes, a commune. Yes, we need that. We need support. We need people helping out, especially during these times, pregnancy, birth, postpartum. It's such a trying time, and we're not meant to do it alone. So why are we doing it alone?
Yeah, yeah, it's a strange time to be in.
Yes.
I think the other question that I was going to ask you, obviously we've talked a lot about sort of postpartum, postnatal, and all that sort of stuff, but you did mention that you did things with them around fertility as well.
Yeah. So that is also personal to me. And when I started thinking, I've always wanted to be a mom. I've always had this desire that one day I will grow up, and I didn't know how. Like, I don't know. When you're a kid, you're just like, yeah, I'm going to have kids. You don't think about, oh, will I actually have a partner, or will I actually be able
Yeah,
to conceive quickly?
and the
You know?
stock brings it. It's fine.
Yeah, the stork will just bring me the babies that I want. And I had this idea that I wanted 4 babies, and now I'm like, no, totally done with 2. Your whole perspective changes. And so when I was ready to have a baby, I was with my husband and we were married, and we're like, yeah, we kind of get the gist of how to do this. You're a sex educator, right? Yeah, we have sex, and the baby will come and it'll all be great. And so we tried that, and it didn't happen the first month. And we're like, okay, it's just the first month. Like, it probably takes a little longer than that, right? And then the second month didn't happen. Third month didn't happen. And then it started getting a little stressful, because it's like, wait a second, we were ready for this. So why is it not happening? And I think that's another thing people don't talk about, is that the reality is your chances of becoming pregnant each month are not 100%.
Yeah.
We, especially when I think back to my work, when I worked with teen parents or teenagers, we tell teenagers that if you have sex, you're going to get pregnant. And so we're never told anything different as adults, or as we get older. It's like, yeah, that's how it's
Yeah.
going to go. And so then when it doesn't happen right away, it can be very stressful. And I navigated that with my husband. And what is wrong with me? I would ask myself, is it
Mhm.
me? Am I broken? Am I not doing it right? Am I too stressed? But now I need to not stress, but this is causing stress.
Yeah.
I'm taking like the ovulation predictor, test. I'm timing it on my phone and saying, okay, this is when we need to have sex. We need to do it now. And I've done my fertility meditations and I'm ready, right? And
Standing
so
on
my
my head
husband,
afterwards, it'll all be fine. Yeah.
I did that too. I did it
Yeah.
too. So if you're listening and you've done that, you're not alone.
Yeah. I think most of us have gone through that.
Yeah, going through this phase of, okay, this is actually really hard. So, what I do as a sex coach is I validate that. I want people to have permission to know that it's okay to feel stressed about it. It's okay to feel like, things aren't going the way you want them to because you haven't been told any different. We don't talk about what the reality is. And then once you do talk about it, you hear all these other parents say, "Oh, yeah, that was me too. Oh, yeah, it took me 3 years before. Oh, it took me going through IVF and insemination and needing to find a sperm donor to have children." And you're like, "What? How come I never heard of that before?" And so there are people sharing their stories. And I think that's important to start is looking into this podcast where you're sharing stories with people, and then seek out other stories too, because you'll notice that you then won't feel as alone on the path. And I really encourage couples who are trying to conceive is it's I'm pausing as I'm saying my own advice because I know how it sounds, but you really kind of have to let go of that schedule and that belief that you are able to plan your life.
Yeah.
And it sounds so ridiculous saying it because I
No, but
know I'm like,
it's right though, because I mean, we went through it as well. And we went through things like I got looked at for things like endometriosis and polycystic ovarian syndrome and things like that. It got to a point where we were starting to do investigations and whatnot. And at the point I went, I can't be chewed with this. I don't want it. I don't want to go to all these hospital appointments. I don't want to be faffed about with. If it's not going to happen, it's not going to happen. Let it go. And literally the month after, I got pregnant.
yes.
And it's so many times you hear these stories from people who say, "Oh well, we've been trying for years and we tried this, blah 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 blah," and in the end we gave up and then we got pregnant. Or the
Hmm.
stories where, "Oh well, we looked into surrogacy, so we now have two children because our surrogate was pregnant at the same time we were," and things
Yes.
and
Yep.
it's this reoccurring theme, but it's so hard to let go of when you're in the thick of it because it in itself is causing you stress, which obviously isn't helping either. I mean, obviously, I'm not diminishing anybody else's. There are other medical reasons why you can't get pregnant and things like that, and it doesn't happen for everybody, and it doesn't happen easily for everybody. But the majority of the cases, when you're talking to people like, "Oh yeah, well, it took us so many years, and we did this, we did that, we went absolutely off our cases, and we weed on however many sticks, blah 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 blah," and when we gave
Hmm.
up, we got pregnant.
Hmm.
So yeah, it
There's a lot
sounds
of
it
truth
yeah.
to it. It-
Yeah,
Unfortunately, we don't want it to be true, but there is some truth to it.
yeah,
And yeah, so when it comes to sex, then if you are trying to conceive through penetration, sex with your partner, and not going, a different route with IVF or sperm donors or things like that, you have to remember that you are both people. Right. I know for me with my husband, I was just like, okay, so at 4 p.m. we're going to have sex and I don't care what you're doing. Like, come on, I need you and let's get this done. Let's
yeah.
go.
That's only fun the first two times.
Yeah. And at first he's like, oh yeah, yeah, let's go. Like, awesome, she wants it. And then you're like, wait a second, you're only using me because you want a baby. Like, I want you to
Yeah.
want me,
Yeah.
and so sometimes we forget that our partners are people too. At least I did. And so so much can build up surrounding that, and so you really want to be careful, anybody listening, going through that journey of remembering that that person is a person. You don't want resentment to build up. You don't want to finally get pregnant and then be like, oh, well, the way of getting there really wasn't fun. It really wasn't great. And maybe we could have connected or communicated better with each other. Because then you're going to be hit with pregnancy and a whole nother ball game of questions and concerns and
Yeah,
things that are going to stress
absolutely.
your relationship.
Yeah, brilliant. Um, so I think we'll kind of round it off a little bit. Was there anything, if you had sort of like one piece of advice you could give to anybody listening, what would it be?
Prioritize your own self pleasure first.
Oh, I like it. That's a good piece of advice.
You have to start with yourself and really look inside deep and think, what do I truly want? Not what society tells you that you should want, not
Hmm.
what your partner tells you that you should want, not even sometimes what we have time for, right? Like sometimes we have to think outside of the box and say, what would my ideal sex life look like? What would my ideal pleasure journey look like? It doesn't even have to be sex with a partner, but how do I want to relate to myself? And how am I going to do that? And when you start asking those questions, women especially, I know there's probably many different gendered people listening to this, but women have been socialized to not prioritize pleasure particularly. And then we don't get the opportunity to really explore that
Yeah.
in a safe way. So if you start with yourself first, I say that's my one piece of advice, because no one can ever take that from you. Whether you're single, in a relationship, get divorced, you're married, you're having babies, not having babies, you always have yourself, and you can always go on that journey to find out what's fun, what's enjoyable, what don't I want to do right now, and that's okay too. And just honoring and respecting that for yourself.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. Thank you so much for that. So anybody who wants to find you, where can they find you?
So you can follow me at Sex Coach Kaci, Kaci, on Instagram. I'm also on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Threads, TikTok. Call me sexcoachkaci@gmail.com, or visit my website, sexcoachkaci.com.
Brilliant. That's excellent. Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for joining us for this insightful episode of the Mother Gaia Birthday Pod. A huge thank you to the incredible Sex Coach Kaci for sharing her wisdom and expertise on such an important topic. If you'd like to connect with Kaci or learn more about her work, be sure to check out the show notes for all of her details, as well as mine if you'd like to explore the services I offer. Next week we'll be diving into another amazing real mum's birth story. We'll be sharing her unique journey into motherhood, which is both inspiring and heartwarming, so you don't want to miss out on that. Until then, take care, prioritise yourself, and remember, your journey is powerful and unique. Thank you for listening.